Engineers from 8 councils, including 3 Queensland shires, met in Moree today to discuss sharing resources. While they admit there could be teething problems, it's something the councils believe is worth a try.
We're going to look at tendering of major plant items and roadworks, and I guess as the problems come along we'll try and combat them. If in the end run we see the problem's too big, we'll have to look at it again, but it's certainly worth giving it a run.
But the group's plans don't stop there. It's hoping to plug the 25-kilometre railway gap between North Star and Gundawindi, which breaks the line between Queensland and New South Wales.
We're putting submissions on behalf of the group to the Queensland ministers and also New South Wales ministers. We're approaching anybody we can to talk about that matter because we see that as vital.
Lake Macquarie is no different to most other cities in Australia. Council is constantly fighting a battle to stop young people defacing walls and property with graffiti. However, instead of condemning the street art, the Lake Council is taking a new tact, encouraging young artists to do their work legally. Councillor Jill Hall says she's spoken with teenagers and believes what she calls graffiti walls are the answer.
What Council's doing is making graffiti art a socially acceptable activity. It's allowing young people or older people, if they're interested in graffiti art, to go out there and do their art in an area that's legal and supported by the community.
Just where the walls will be located will be determined by a committee of police, councillors and young people. But not everyone thinks the idea of establishing a graffiti wall is a good one. Mark Booth is one councillor who says it'll be a waste of time. He says there's little chance teenagers will travel to an established wall when they feel the urge to spray graffiti. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
This is the man who wants to be the next Premier of New South Wales, and Bob Carr's campaign was in full swing at the entrance, attacking the government for not finishing the Wyong Road.
To us, this is a vital regional roadwork. We want to see it go ahead. I think it's disgraceful that the government, which can find $1.5 billion to spend in the context of the Parramatta by-election, can't give the Central Coast a second thought.
In the campaign fever of the entrance by-election, the state government promised to fix Wyong Road between Tuggerah and Killarney Vale by 1996. 5 out of 7 stages are complete at a cost of $40 million, but it'll take another $20 million to finish the job. The project is running 2 months behind schedule, and the State Minister for Transport, Bruce Baird, says he can't commit further money until after next month's budget. The opposition also attacked the government's health record, with Wyong women still having to commute to Gosford to have babies.
The maternity wing, which was opened in July 1992, is still not operational. We still have not got babies being born at Wyong.
One mother, Jenny Crouch, had to give birth at a service station on her way to Gosford. But the Chief Executive Officer of the Central Coast Health Service, Graham McGuinness, says the delivery section can't open until the hospital hires a second anaesthetist. He says the service is advertised for more than 18 months, but without success, as there's an Australian-wide shortage of the specialists. The hospital already offers pre- and postnatal care. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
It was an early morning stretch out for the Knights at Marathon Stadium, a team luncheon and a round of golf in the afternoon. The aim was to relax the team while focusing on the Manly clash. The Knights will be looking for a good start on Sunday, this proving a vital ingredient to Newcastle's successes this year. While coach David Waite hopes for a solid start, he's realistic about the task ahead.
They've got a couple of fresh forwards coming back who didn't play last week. They've got a very, very strong pack of forwards which we have to get on top of, and the Lions show at the moment is a very dominant one in relation to Manly's success.
Waite has made some changes to the lineup. Robbie Ross makes his first grade debut, Herman promoted from reserve grade, with Nathan Barnes moved to the centres. On the coaching issue and speculation there may be changes to the Knights coaching lineup if David Waite retains the top job, Waite says that's up to the board.
Will I make changes to the coaching lineup? Well, let's not worry about changes to anything just yet. Let's see who's coaching the side.
Reserve grade coach Robert Finch said today Waite had mentioned to him there would be changes if he got the job, adding Waite hadn't personally told Finch it would involve him. But Finch said with only 2 other coaches in the club, he was concerned about his future.
Only a few months ago, Professor Michael Dudman was preparing a special concert to celebrate his 25th year in Newcastle. He had a distinguished musical career, from his first public performance at the age of 14 to his numerous overseas concerts and recitals. His efforts were recognised in 1990 when he was awarded an Australian Medal for services to music. The 55-year-old was taken to hospital following a heart attack last Wednesday. After a brief stay, he returned to his Bar Beach home where he suffered another attack late Saturday.
It was a great shock to all of us. We were very saddened to hear about Michael, and I think we're still trying to come to terms with this.
As Dean of the University's Faculty of Music, he oversaw the growth of Newcastle's Conservatorium through to amalgamation. With many memorable performances at Christchurch Cathedral, Professor Dudman gave his last public concert there only a month ago.
I think it's a great loss. I think he'll be sadly missed. He always had a terrific vision, I think, for music in Newcastle, and he held very firmly to those principles, and oversaw many good changes into musical life in Newcastle.
Michael Dudman is survived by his 5 sons. His funeral will be held at the cathedral on Wednesday afternoon.
At many farms on the mid-north coast, the drought has meant dams are dry and paddocks are bare. Elwyn Walsh is one of a number of farmers who are now starting to grain feed their beef cattle.
Well, there's going to be a fair bit more cost and fairly costly. But that's if you can get it too, also. I mean, it can be very hard to get hand feed from now on.
The Walsh family is fortunate though. They've been able to irrigate land to grow fodder for their dairy cows and stud cattle, both giving a steady income. Many farmers are now seeking advice about how to survive the drought. The Agriculture Advisory Service in Torres is receiving about a dozen calls from people on the land every day. District Livestock Officer Michael Beer says many queries are about whether to sell cattle or hang on to them until it rains.
Selling is a suitable option for a lot of producers, and whilst it's often a hard decision to make in the first instance, that early decision can often save a great expense further down the track.
With hay expensive and hard to get, farmers are also asking about the best alternatives for feed. Michael Beer says each farmer's situation is different, but the advisory service is available to anyone wanting information. Jane Anderson, NBN News. The drama happened on the Manning River, where a new bridge is being built as part of the Tari bypass. A steel barge was crossing from one side of the river to the other when it came dangerously close to high voltage power lines.
Just sparks. What else can you see? All you see are these little sparks.
The barge didn't actually touch the electricity wires, but like a lightning bolt, the electricity flashed across onto the metal hull when it came within 3 metres of the power lines.
They came too close to the 66,000 volt wires which carry supply to Foster and Tuncurry, and they came close enough for the electric field to cause a flashover.
Oxley electricity engineer David Edwards inspected the site this morning. He says the 2 men on the barge were lucky they were not electrocuted.
It's becoming quite a talking point in Hamilton. Today, demolishers inspected the site, planning for the next attack. Last night was the second crack at the job. Residents in nearby streets were evacuated from houses, streets blocked off, creating traffic chaos. And that followed Sunday's failure. It seems the old wheat silos just don't want to come down.
Our explosive guys have had 25 or 30 years experience in this field and they've done them all over the world, and they've never struck any silos like this ever.
Inspections have found the building is not one block as thought. Cracks separate the silo towers, and so detonation attempts have only partially succeeded each time. It's been an awkward few weeks for residents of adjoining Hudson Street, evacuated from their homes at each attempt.
It's hard with the kids and the grandmother, that's the hardest part. We're not worried about us, but getting in and out of the house, especially in the wet weather and the cold.
So the silo saga continues. WorkCover says the site is safe, with guards on the property for 24 hours a day. The next attempt to bring down the structure tomorrow afternoon. Developers eventually hope to turn the site into the Hamilton Mail Exchange and a multi-million-dollar area for shops and restaurants. Peter Ryan, NBN News. It was a sombre goodbye for a man described as a creative light with exceptional brilliance. Filling the Christchurch Cathedral were members of Newcastle's academic and musical fraternity, remembering Professor Michael Dudman, who was Dean of the university's Faculty and Conservatorium of Music. Vice-Chancellor of the university, Professor Ral Mortley, gave the eulogy, describing him as a man who was devoted to music.
He settled only for the best possible and pursued his creative talent and its development to the highest possible levels.
And a haunting moment, the last solo organ recording by Professor Dudman in the cathedral, his music again filling the chamber of the church. Professor Dudman passed away in the early hours of Sunday morning after a sudden illness, aged 55. He is survived by 5 children.
Tony Herman wasn't able to train last night, while Robbie O'Davis is still hopeful of playing despite a knee injury. One player fit and eagerly awaiting Sunday's clash is 21-year-old law student Shane Vincent. The former Australian schoolboy representative will make his first appearance in the top grade, and with Nathan Barnes, will take on the Bulldogs centre combination of Stephen Hughes and Kiwi international Jared McCracken.
They've come off a loss last week, and
they're cracking out a quiet game, so we'll be able to make amends this week, and hopefully it's not my expense, but I'll be able to do my best on Sunday, and hopefully I'll walk off happy with my game.
Vincent is the leading try scorer in reserve grade, 5 points clear of Canterbury at the top of the competition table. With just 3 games remaining and first grade out of contention, the Knights have resisted the temptation of attempting to qualify more players for the reserve grade semi-finals.
To drop first graders back is to denigrate the performance of reserve grade. One of the things that I'll make sure, as long as I'm in charge of this place, is that we won't cheapen a first grade jumper in Newcastle.
Since their inception, the Knights have won 6 of the 7 final home matches. Ironically, the only loss was to Canterbury 3 years ago. With this in mind, Waite and the side are determined to give their fans, which have increased by more than 5,000 at home matches this season, something to cheer at their final home game of the season.
Those 20,000 people that have been here on average every time in 1994 must really enjoy their football here, and I can assure you that the last one this year will be something special as well.
After a company report showed workers' productivity has risen by 46%, those who helped boost profits demanded their share. Employees voted to drop the 5% pay rise already negotiated and push for a 10% increase. 650 workers planned a 6-day strike. Hearings before the Industrial Relations Commission failed to resolve the issue. A union spokesperson said Commissioner Lang was unable to negotiate the matter between the company and the 3 unions involved. Workers are planning to set up a picket line at the site tomorrow. Meanwhile, a settlement has been reached over a redundancy payment dispute at the Rundle's clothing factory at Katara. Picketers have been manning the gates since Monday after 23 people were sacked and 300 employees went on strike in support of their claims. Although details are yet to be released, both parties reached an agreement in the Industrial Commission today. The terms of the settlement will be put to a meeting on Monday with a recommendation of a return to work. Melinda Smith, NBN News.
Kiralee Huxtable died last month, 10 weeks after her tiny body was scalded in a bath. Charged with her murder today in Wallsend Court was 25-year-old Mark Gorman. The child's mother and Gorman's former girlfriend, 21-year-old Belinda Armstrong, was charged with manslaughter. It's alleged Gorman ran a bath for Kiralee to teach her a lesson after she'd soiled her nappies. He claims the lighting in the bathroom was poor and the tap was mistakenly turned to hot. He heard the child screaming. She had burns to her lower body, arms and stomach. He wiped what appeared to be wet toilet paper from the child's legs, only to find it was peeling skin. Kiralee was taken to John Hunter Hospital in a near-death state 5 hours after the scalding. Despite weeks of intensive care in Sydney and up to 10 skin graft operations, Kiralee lost her battle 3 weeks ago. Trevor Huxtable, Kiralee's natural father, was with her when she died.
She was a battler. She had them all stunned. She was quite good through the whole lot. And just got too much for her in the end.
Strict bail conditions have been continued for both defendants. During previous appearances, Armstrong and Gorman have sat together holding hands. However, today they were positioned on opposite sides of the courtroom, with Armstrong taking out a domestic violence order against her former de facto husband. The pair will reappear in court in 2 weeks. Jodie McKay, NBN News. Police assembled early this morning at the Maryland nursery. They believed a 41-year-old man was holed up inside a nearby house with numerous weapons, the result of a domestic dispute.
After a visitor, there was a bit of a flare-up at the house in McNaughton Avenue at Marylands. As a result of that, the 41-year-old occupant of the house, the man got into his car and he drove off, and he was away most of the night actually. During that time his family also left the house. He came back shortly after 8 o'clock this morning, and we believed he was armed at that time.
A cordon was set up around the house in McNaughton Avenue, but just as contact was about to be made with the man, he was seen to leave the house. Police were unsure whether there were firearms in the vehicle. Ivan Hosan drove to Wallsend Police Station and gave himself up. He was charged with possessing a firearm while unlicensed and possessing a firearm while under the influence of alcohol. He faced Wallsend Court this afternoon and was convicted on both offences. Police say they were pleased with the operation, which involved around 20 officers.
The police involved have voiced their opinions as to how it went, and on the whole everyone's very happy with the level of expertise displayed today.
Sydney drivers filled the first 4 placings in the Junior Clubman final, James Courtney prevailing in one of the most entertaining races of the day, Alan Jones's son Christian finishing 8th. But the most dominant performance came from Melbourne's Australian champion Ben Savage, the 22-year-old taking the Clubman Light class, adding to his tally of 5 state and national titles. Newcastle's Wayne Stoddart finished second in the Piston Port division, while Scott Withers won the cadet class, with Peter Lawler finishing a gallant 5th after starting from the back of the grid in the Clubman Light. The best efforts from Northwest drivers came from Adam Barnes and Stephen Rapman in the Junior J Light division, which was won by Sydney's Ryan Driscoll. Having staged the Northwest's biggest ever kart meeting, the Tamworth Club is now bidding for the Nationals. That decision will not be made until later in the year, most now focusing on this year's Australian titles in Lithgow on October 10. Toronto qualified for the grand final with a courageous 24-16 win against Western Suburbs on Sunday. The Scorpions' victory achieved with just 12 players after Simon Cook was dismissed by referee Tony Farrell for punching midway through the first half. Club officials concede Cook's absence in the grand final would be a blow.
Very classy player. He's scored 19 tries for us this year, and I'd say one of the most dangerous attacking players in the competition.
Cook also appeared in the referee's match report for allegedly gouging an opponent, a charge also denied by Toronto. But it seems Wests are keen to continue Saturday's battle at the judiciary tonight, viewing video evidence today with the possibility of asking the league to cite other Toronto players.
The disappointing thing is that you can have a drink with their players after the game and everything's fine, and the officials want to take it to the boardroom, and games are decided on the football field, and that's where we'd like to leave it.
Meantime, in the Central Coast competition, the entrants down Woy Woy in the minor semi-final, while in Group 21, Singleton advanced to the final with a 2-point win over Muswellbrook.
it was a perfect day for flying. Impulse has bought 10 Jetstream 41 planes at a cost of $75 million US, a cool $1 billion Australian. The aircraft complete with the latest in aviation technology.
Circuit breakers.
Okay, that's set.
For the first time on regional flights out of Williamtown, the new 29-seat aircraft are big enough for flight attendants to provide in-flight service. Impulse says the expense is more than justified by a dramatic increase in passenger numbers since the company took over Oxley Airlines 15 months ago.
In 1992 we did 56,000 passengers, 93 we did 220,000 passengers, and 94 we're going to do around about 300,000 passengers. So the growth has been remarkable.
October will see Newcastle-Melbourne direct flights take off, a service that's seen as an important milestone in the region's growth. Meanwhile, the $3 million renovations of Newcastle Airport should be completed by December. As well as improvements to the apron and car park, the terminal itself is undergoing extensive changes.
We see Newcastle Airport as being the major regional hub for northern New South Wales.
Joanne Shoebridge, NBN News.
What sort of cat is she? Very, very aloof to the other cat. Now we're doing the nice lines that give you the look of a cat. Whiskers on now. So you're starting to look like a real... Can you see?
If you look at the house and think about it, it's Victorian all right, but it's got shades of India in it to me. It's got a slightly look of the Indian Raj about it, this house, in its form.
Designed by English architect Benjamin Backhouse and built in 1874 for pastoralist Duncan Forbes, Minimbar House was extravagant even then.
And Victorian England was extremely powerful, and they had whatever they wanted, at least the rich did. And in a sense, Australia, although it was in a different continent on the other side of the world, shared access to that expertise and wealth in a weird sort of way. Today, nobody would dream of building this house. They couldn't. It cost £76,000 to build then. If you convert that to today's money, I don't know, it'd be tens of millions of dollars. And to build this house today, I don't think it'd be possible.
Frank Rickwood bought Minimbar House almost 11 years ago for much less than that. It has 45 rooms, but he says that's cosy.
I always say to my friends it's a cosy house, and they think it's unusual to call a house as big as this cosy, but it is. I've lived in big houses, and this is the kindest one I've ever lived in.
And the housekeeping? Well, apparently, it's not that bad.
I took one look and I thought, wow, where do I start? But now, it's quite okay. It's just a matter of routine. Probably the dusting's the worst. But then when it comes sort of about once a month, I do polish the floors, and that's a big job. But again, if I do it in sections, there's no problems.
If you don't have a whole mass of people running around, it's no more difficult than any other house.
Much of the house was built with local materials, all of which have stood the test of time.
A little bit of adding was done somewhere around 1905. I think they wanted to sort of modernise, perhaps. But they didn't change the fundamentals of it, and it's 120 years old now, the house. And I see no reason why it shouldn't go for another 120 years.
Hopefully the view will also remain unchanged. Even in a drought, it's spectacular. And though it's hard to tear yourself away, Frank is selling up and leaving. The house, unfortunately, without the furniture or marvellous art treasures, is on sale until September the 17th.
Newlyweds and first home buyers Andrew and Stacey C had a job ahead of them when they arrived to work on their house this morning. It, along with a neighbouring duplex in the Swansea Shores estate, was the target of spray can vandals. Public walkways and cars in the neighbourhood also copped the can.
I just can't believe it at the moment.
Yeah, it does make it angry.
The C's are now considering camping in their unfinished home, and Swansea Shores developers will look into extra security patrols. Police suspect the vandals worked at creating the mess for several hours, but the clean-up job is expected to take days.
We were expecting it, to be honest, because there's no lighting around the estate as yet. They're starting to put it in, but yeah, it's just pitch black down here over night time.
But the attack comes as a total shock to Sydney-sider Bill Martins, who's bought land on the estate to move his family out of the graffiti-plagued western suburbs.
I never expected this to happen here. I thought things were still under control, but apparently they're not.